On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." The chief priests and the teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him, for they feared him, because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. When evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city.
Watch out, folks. Jesus is asking to be attacked and arrested. And yes, the leaders look for an opportunity to kill him. What, other than bad behaviour or rudeness, is so wrong with what Jesus has said and done? Many years ago, someone in one of my churches suggested to me that this reading meant we shouldn't have the fair trade stall in our worship space. It was, in fact, entirely the opposite. This reading means we should. Jesus here is standing up, as God always does, for those who are poor and downtrodden. The temple was God's holy place, and yet the puppet King Herod had defiled it, along with the Roman authorities, with symbols of the Roman occupation. This courtyard was supposed to be a place where all nations could come to pray, a place for all comers, but it had become a market. And the people were being robbed of the opportunity for faith and for prayer. Jesus says the Jews were being robbed of their holy place and their independent nation. And then there were laws that robbed people. The law said the faithful had to offer a sacrifice to God in the temple, but the priests had to authorize that it was okay for sacrifice. Those animals then had to be bought in this market, because that's the only ones the priests would approve. In the temple, you had to use special money, which could only be exchanged in this market. Like Jesus, I'm sure you can spot opportunities for corruption and profiteering, for the people to be robbed. Back to that church, the fair trade stall was the right thing in a place of prayer, because it was a sign of standing with the world's poor. But in the temple, Jesus rubs it in by quoting from the scriptures as if he's talking about himself, as if he is God. Jesus was showing God's priorities. They were God's priorities then, and they're God's priorities now. Everyone, whoever they are, must be able to pray and to practice their faith. God's priorities then and now are that God sides with the poor. The rich have become rich because many have been made poor. God's desire for a just world is to side with the poor. The justice Jesus calls for will alarm those in power, and yes, even now, still to the point of killing those who call for that justice. Jesus was rude, he was disrespectful to the leadership and to the government. No wonder they wanted to get rid of him. But what they saw as rudeness and disrespect was God's call for justice. Jesus asks us to follow him and also to cry out for that justice. And so pray with me. God of justice, on this Monday, we think of the actions of Jesus standing up to the kings and rulers, standing up to religious leaders who've forgotten justice, standing up to the business people who exploit rules, workers and customers for personal profiteering. Loving God, creator of justice, when we're exploited, help us to know you stand with us. When we are tempted to exploit others, help us to see you looking back at us. Help us to be people who stand with you against poverty and stand with those who are poor. God of all places and peoples, hear our prayer. Amen.